Hello friends, and welcome to a new series called Learn With Me. I'm your host, Christopher, and today I'm going to start a new series on calligraphy. The book we're going to be studying out of for the next couple of weeks is The Ultimate Guide to Modern Calligraphy and Hand Lettering for Beginners. The author is Kristen, and her company is June and Lucy. If you would like, I know I've found this in places such as Hobby Lobby, but it won't be needed for you to purchase this. You can just follow along as we go. Now, the things that you will need are a notebook or something that's college ruled, and then some pens. We're going to be working with a standard Sakura Micron pen. It's going to be 0.5, so it's a little bit more a little easier to see when it comes to the camera. A Tombow calligraphy pen, which is a brush pen with two different colored nibs. And my personal favorite, a Pilot parallel pen, which is a metal chisel tip that goes as thin as you want, or as thick as 2.4 on this particular model. Now, let's see. How about we start with our names? I'll go first. Christopher. Now, the reason we're starting out with names, or with anything per se, is so we have a ground point, something that we can jump off of, something that we can look back on and go, hey, I used to write like that. So anytime we feel discouraged, or we don't think we're making any progress, we can look back and go, oh yes, I have made quite the amount of progress. I'm just going to use all three pens here just to kind of showcase what each does. And then we are going to write a simple sentence so that we can base all of our advanced knowledge on what we originally started out with. Alright. And as you can imagine, pretty common sentence for doing any kind of calligraphy or writing. Write it normally and then write it in cursive. Okay. We don't have to do this in all of the pens. We can just do it in one. And it should be enough to give us an idea of how we're doing. Alright. Oop, wrong way. There we go. Now, even though this pen doesn't show much in the way of progress, it's probably one of my favorites to write with. Okay. And we will call this our first written pieces. Okay. And now, following along in the book, if you have it, we're turning to page 12. And what we're going to do is least simple upstroke and downstroke. Since this is an introduction, I think that's all we're going to do for the day. So what we're doing is straight up and down, just a simple up with light pressure. Go up. And you can do this as quickly as you want, or as slowly as you want, just to get an idea. But again, light pressure. We're just working on control right now and how to make a straight line. There we go. Alright, this will be our upstroke. And then we'll switch up to our calligraphy pen, the Tombow. T there. And up. It's a little bit harder to control. But as you can tell, it already is a little bit thicker and creates more twists and turns and waves to each line. And we can again go as slow as we want or as quick as we want. It's just all about learning how to create that upward line. And all right, here, S for Sakura pen. And now onto the parallel pen. And we'll just do one quick stroke. Now the downside of using the parallel pen is that on a paper as thin as this, it tends to bleed. So you're not going to get as accurate of a indication of what your pen can do until you get something thicker. But here is it thin, and then if we go at its widest point, have very thick, broad strokes. And I am not good at keeping it this way with this configuration. Sometimes it's just best to adjust. There we go. That's a little better. But yeah, you'll notice, especially up at the tops here, it starts to bleed a little bit. So let's grab a piece of paper. One that we've been playing with recently. And we'll see it takes the paper much better with the 3. But here, since it doesn't absorb the ink as much, it tends to get over your hand more. So you gotta be careful if you're a lefty. But let's just do basic upstroke here. Simple, basic stroke. Again, we're doing this as slow as we need or as fast as we need. Actually, it really starts to look cool with the textured paper. It's amazing what it does when it bounces that metal around. Alright. And then we'll remove this for a second. And we will switch to doing a downstroke. Okay. All right. So downstroke. Almost the same concept, but we are putting pressure to this probably more pressure than what you're normally used to. We're pressing it down, just pressing it down, making a straight line. There we go. Just creating tons of little sticks. And the goal isn't to create the most perfect stick. The goal is to just get consistent with what you have. Alright. Ah, there we are. See how much thicker that tombow has become versus those upstrokes? Because we're pressing down and pushing that nib. That's creating a thicker line as it bends. Beautiful little fence posts. There we are. And now, the parallel pen. Alright. You gotta be careful how much you press with a parallel pen because it is closer to a ink pen, a dauber pen. If you press too hard, it'll grab that paper and it'll stutter. You'll start flinging ink everywhere. So press harder than you would doing that upstroke, but not so hard to fling ink. Because I'll see if I can do it here. Let's see here. I've kind of messed with it enough that my hand goes, nope, we're not doing this again. Okay. Upstroke, downstroke. Then again, the thickness of this depends upon how you hold it, not necessarily how much weight you're putting on it. So if we go down versus going up, not much of a difference besides the way I'm moving. There we go. Alright. And now just a slight variation. We're going up. We have a diagonal to it this time. So we're flicking to the side. Like grass being blown in the wind. Just flick it to the side here. You can again do this as quick as you want or as slowly as you want. Just about the consistency. Okay. Alright. Well, the reason I started this was because my buddy got me this book. I think it was for Christmas, and it was like, you know what? I should probably use that. It's been a while since I've done calligraphy. And he has always written in cursive, unlike me, who's transitioned back and forth. So his cursive is beautiful. Whereas mine needs some work. Okay, so back to the parallel pen. And we're just flicking to the side. And again, as quickly or as slowly as you want. No, and it's so easy with the parallel pen to go, oh, I want to do it this way. Or I want to do it that way. It just lends to creativity. But right now, it's just all about that consistency. I didn't really know much about calligraphy or really cursive until I started seeing it more in media. I was watching a show called Barakamon, where the whole show's premise is centered around a character who does calligraphy, but the thing is he was kicked out, and so sentenced to exile on an island, which seems very harsh. He then learns the value of calligraphy and friendship. After watching that, and them showing what all you can do with calligraphy and how you can make it creative, I started to gain an interest back into it. And I have found it quite enjoyable and therapeutic ever since. So right now we are doing the down diagonal. Just apply pressure and pull left. That's all we're doing. Just applying pressure, pulling left. Now with Tombow, and really with doing the diagonal, it's about learning how to keep that diagonal the same. Consistency through and through. I probably sound like a broken record at this point, but right now it's all about the rules. How do we learn the rule and how do we understand it? Okay. And the pilot. Now with this pen it's relatively easy. You get on a certain line because it is metal and it just stays. Whereas the brush pen, when you're pulling hard, you have weight on it, it tends to move a bit. This, once you put weight into it, it almost cuts into the paper. It doesn't quite, but because of that, it holds to a specific line. So it's really easy to do your thin lines. Now a thick line, it may be a little difficult to do sideways. It will start to kick back on the paper. Like what I was talking about earlier, when it will fling ink. Doesn't happen very often. It's very rare, and once you control it, you're fine. This is one of those points where it will try and do that if you're pressing too hard. Okay. Well, I think that about wraps it up for this introduction. Just a real focus, and amazingly, we almost did an entire page worth right here. So, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being here. And I think next week we're going to start focusing more on squiggles and curves and loops and less on lines. We'll start to put this stuff into practice. But for now, thanks for watching, and we will see you then. Cheers!